So I know it's the stroke of 6 o'clock, and I do like to start things on time, and we'll just continue to welcome people as they come in through the messy intersection out there. I am Carrie Thompson, and I am your relatively new mayor. And do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Hopi Stasberg, and I'm the District 3 City Council representative. So District 3, we're actually right across the street from District 3, so it's north of 3rd Street, and then from the city limits on the east side through about Union Street, and then it kind of jigjags north through campus to the north side of town. So north and east side representative. And I also see Representative at Large Andy Ruff coming in the door right now if we want to pass the mic to him. He is.
Come on up, Andy. Unless you don't want to. No, there's no grace period. You have all the grace in the world, but we still hand you the mic as soon as we just are doing quick introductions. Who are you?
I'm Andy Ruff, and I'm the Councilmember at Large.
Awesome. So I've been hosting these town halls every other month since January, and in the months I don't do this, I do traveling office hours. And so for those folks who are less comfortable speaking up or offering index cards in public, there are also traveling office hours. And it's just a starter on the journey to try to make your city government really open and accessible to you all, to come to your neighborhoods. And I'm grateful to Council Members Ruff and Stasberg for joining tonight. We've been inviting different council members to join. These are really casual, so I'm going to offer you just some highlines from what I'm seeing and hearing lately, and then I'll invite council members to do the same if they would like. And then I will answer questions that are submitted by index card, and they may or may not be directed to council members, but we will collectively answer those. We'll keep taking those. Desiree, can you wave in the back? So if you get Desiree's eye, she'll bring us cards with your questions. And we're grateful to BCAT for being here tonight. And I also see Dave Askins is here, who tirelessly follows city government. And if you're not reading the B Square yet, that's where you can find out everything online. And I encourage you to support him on Patreon. That's my plug for local government coverage by Dave. So let me give you a few highlights from over here. I know we have some people from Green Acres community here. Thank you for coming. And that neighborhood is working on, I know, a conservancy district, and happy to talk a little bit more about that if people are interested in talking about that. The elephant in the room on this side of town, of course, is this awesome intersection out here, which has been done and redone again. I used to live over here and would dread every time INDOT would mess with that intersection. They're doing it again. That is an INDOT project. It's not a City of Bloomington project, but they are set to wrap it up on July 31st is our understanding. So that's an update there. Just 1 month late, which I'm new to government, but for a road project, I think that's pretty excellent. 1 month late. And I think oh, wow, okay. So government living up to its reputation of delayed road work there. We also have a cut in our greenway over on the east side by 17th Street. We continue to work on getting that paved and patched. And so we're aware that that's happening. That is also an INDOT repair. So I assure you, we are in conversation, engineering and Office of the Mayor in conversation with INDOT on these various projects. And the good news is that the Morningside Greenway construction is complete now. And so as a cyclist who used to cycle from this side of town, hopefully that greenway is a help to the Park Ridge neighborhood. I wanted to highlight a couple of non-East Side issues that you may or may not have heard about. One I know that you have heard about is the storm. As you know, we had a major storm a week and a half ago, two weeks ago, last night, something like that. So our crews have been hard at work clearing things, partnering with Duke to help them get trees out of their power lines. And now we have hired a contractor to work alongside our crews to come get the residential debris. And so if you still have debris and you haven't filed a U report, Desiree at the back can help you find that U report. We encourage you to file a U report to say I have debris to come pick up, but if your neighbor has, then we'll be in the area and we're scouting for that debris, so don't worry too much about it. But if you happen to live in an area that you're not seeing a lot of other debris stacked up and you haven't filed a U report, please do that. We're doing our best to just know where that debris is, but any help you can give us by filing those reports is helpful to us. The other incident that I wanted to just talk briefly about is that we did have a police incident up at Crestmont on last week, and that was a fight with juveniles who one of them had a gun, which turned out to be a toy gun in the end. Our police responded to that. They were subsequently there was there were active there was an altercation that was initiated by the juveniles, and so we ended up in the end arresting 3 juveniles that night. They all were African American, and there were some video clips of that incident shared on the internet. We have looked into this incident and have done some follow-up with the families. All of the juveniles were released back to their families that night. The parents were present for questioning, and our police followed very appropriate protocols. And in fact, in this instance, while we have some lessons learned, by and large should be commended for de-escalating to the point that they did, because that incident could have gone in a very different direction. So we are talking at the cabinet level about how to do some follow-up with the Crestmont neighborhood. Most of what we are getting contact about now is not about the police intervention, but in fact how the city can support the residents in helping teens solve these issues, because these fights evidently are breaking out and becoming more and more violent in that community. And indeed, the youth involved in that altercation all believed that that gun was real. Typically, they have an orange tip on the end of the toy guns. This one did not. So it looked very much like a real Glock and was being used in a threatening way, as if it were real. So it is my administration's priority, of course, to show up in that neighborhood and partner with the neighbors there to have some open conversations about how we can support the youth in solving these issues before it comes to violence, and how we can support the adults that live there as well. So that was a very unfortunate incident, and I am hopeful it is a call to action for all of us to be aware that what we're modeling and how we are mentoring and supporting the youth in our communities really does matter. And I will put a plug in for safe gun laws. This, of course, was a toy gun, but with all of the guns on the street, and now we know more and more youth are being given the guns and asked to do some of these violent acts. We really need some common sense gun laws. So that's my plug for advocacy at the state and federal level for common sense gun laws. I should have ended on a more positive note. So maybe I'll hand it over to Hopi, who may have something more cheerful to update you on. Do you have updates, general updates that you want to talk about, or no? Just want to get a Q&A. How about you, Andy?
I'm just here to hear what people have to say.
Great. So let's start going through the pile of questions here. And there are, in my opinion, there are two huge problems in Bloomington. This is from the question card. A lack of affordable housing and homelessness. What do you plan to do about them, and are they related? Not only are they related, I would say they are very much the same problem. Although once an individual or family becomes homeless, it becomes a much more dire crisis. And so I am working directly with Heading Home and several of the homeless service providers, and we are actively working on a plan. Heading Home, of course, has already committed to the Built for Zero framework. And if people haven't heard about that, let me tell you, it's an awesome nationwide program that helps communities in a model to work towards functional zero homelessness. And I want to tell you, to start this conversation, that I really believe homelessness is solvable. And if any community can solve this problem, it is Bloomington, Indiana. And so I am spending a lot of my time on this issue, and my team is spending a lot of our time on the issue. And there are many service providers out there doing great work. What we're seeing right now, of course, affordable housing is directly tied, because if there are affordable units to live in, people can live in them. And what we have seen, of course, is a lot of building lately. And I have to say, I disagree with the model that if you just build a lot of units, they'll suddenly become affordable. That is, it's in our housing economy, it's not working that way, and it's going to take too long to work that way. And so my administration is focused on not only how we can incentivize more affordable housing, but also how we can create housing that is attainable for the middle income. And it's different than this thing called missing middle housing that you've heard about. Missing middle housing refers more to the size of the house. I'm talking about how much I have to pay to get into a unit. And the lack of middle income housing, in addition to the affordable housing, hi Steve, welcome, is problematic, because not only are we losing people because they simply cannot afford to live in Bloomington, we're losing young professionals. And we're now losing even middle-aged professionals who can't afford to stay here. That's a problem. And so when we have a housing market that creates a system where you either have a subsidized unit, so that's the truly affordable, I make less than 80% of the area median income, or I have to have family wealth or have bought my home so long ago that I can still afford the mortgage payment, we miss out not only on middle income, but we miss out on even the lower wealthy and the sort of upper lower class there. And we really get to a bimodal distribution of wealth. That's not a healthy community. It's not a healthy community for many, many reasons. And for economic development, for the health of our community, for the prosperity of all of us, we need to be concerned about how we are including middle income folks in all of our planning. And so part of the reason I pushed pause on Hopewell was because what we were going to get was the subsidized, truly affordable LIHTC projects and pretty high-end houses that would continue to escalate in cost. And so I really wanted to ask the question, how can we pause? How can our community actually create something here downtown in the center of our community where other people can live, where people throughout the history of Bloomington have been able to live? There is not a great national model for that, and so we are getting really creative about how to do that. That was a really long diatribe. I will just finish this note by saying my deep concern right now is that I at least perceive that even just in the last 2 weeks, we've had an increase in street homelessness. And I'm not exactly sure why. And I've been asking the question to our housing service providers, and they're not exactly sure why. But let me tell you that the Supreme Court ruling in Grants Pass, Oregon, is dangerous for us. It's dangerous because it allows jurisdictions to fine and then jail people for sleeping outside. If other jurisdictions are doing that and we're not, guess where people who don't have houses are going to end up? So we need to find a dignified and compassionate way to help the people on our streets. And we also, and I have started a broader statewide conversation with other mayors on how we can take care of the people that are in our own communities. Because just illegalizing sleeping outside isn't going to do it. We have to provide services. Anybody want to talk about housing? Yes.
I'll just say that for my end, this morning I actually met with somebody from, a representative from HAND and a representative from the Planning Department to talk about the UDO and affordable housing in the UDO, because the UDO Unified Development Ordinance is basically the blueprint for what developers can build and the rules behind what they can build. And there are all kinds of rules in there, and there are lots of rules and definitions about affordable housing and what affordable housing is. And I'm sure that you guys have heard over the last several years the number of affordable units that have been built or have come online. And one of the struggles with that is that affordable units end up right now defined as being really anything under 120% of the area median income. And for Bloomington, that AMI is really high. And if you are a family of 4 living at 120% of the AMI, you're making $108,000. And so if you are a family of 1 at 120% of the AMI, you're making like over $50,000. So if you're somebody who's making $15 an hour, it's more like $30,000. So your housing needs, like you need housing that is significantly below the AMI. And so our incentives right now for developers to build affordable housing are just not well in line with our AMI. So I'm trying to work on how we can align things a little bit better so that when we do develop affordable housing, it's actually affordable.
Hopi serves on our plan commission, for those of you who don't watch those meetings religiously. I don't know why you don't.
They're so fun.
Thank you for your service. It's very interesting, and I think we need to simplify that UDO and find ways to incentivize things that are not just the government subsidized housing.
Emphasize something.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize my support for Mayor Thompson's commitment to addressing this in as many ways and effectively as we can locally, and we have to do it. But to also emphasize that if Bloomington may be one of the communities that can be most successful in this country at addressing this problem, our problem, but we can't solve it for other places. And that's not just the unhoused issue, the homelessness issue. It also, in my view, goes with affordable housing. Because the more successful we are at creating more, and there's no way to prevent demand from other areas from increasing and being pressured on Bloomington, then we're going to have a similar issue with what we're seeing with the unhoused situation. I just came, because these are national problems. I just came from visiting my daughter in Grand Junction, Colorado. I just got back yesterday. And Grand Junction is not Aspen. It's not on the Front Range by Boulder. It's on the far western side, about 20 miles from Utah, at the base of the mountains in the sort of desert out there. And my daughter's been there 5 years with her husband, bought a house 4 years ago. And while I was there, she said, Dad, housing prices in the median housing price costs of housing has gone up 60% in the last 4 years in Grand Junction, Colorado, and wages have gone up 8%. And so this is any community that's the least bit desirable to be in. I mean, there are communities across the country that are not experiencing this, but for various reasons. But any place like Bloomington or even, let's say, Grand Junction, Colorado, this is happening everywhere. And we need to not be on a treadmill on this. We need what Mayor Thompson's been doing, reaching out to other communities in Indiana to coordinate and work with getting all communities to do whatever we can to take care of the folks in our community with the connections in those places. Thanks for giving me an opportunity.
Let's see, let's shift to some transportation and transit kinds of things. We have several questions. One is, we want bus route number 6 to stay in Park Ridge.
Yeah, so the bus route number 6 is detoured right now through Park Ridge East, and I actually heard from several people when I was campaigning and knocking last year that several people in Park Ridge East really wanted the bus to go through there. And I wanted to address this first because I want to highlight that Bloomington Transportation is starting a new micro transit opportunity. They're calling it Blink or B-Link. I think that they want to just say Blink. And it's supposed to start on July 15th. And so the idea is that there are 3 zones of the city, and you can basically, it's like Bloomington Access almost, where anybody could call and schedule a pickup from certain stops within those zones and then get transported to either of those other 2 zones. So one of those zones is the east side, and it includes Park Ridge East. And the second one of those zones is the north side. It includes I think it includes like Meadowood and that area around Dunn Street and all the way west to like it includes Bloomington High School North, which excites me because I have a high schooler. And then the third zone is a downtown zone. And so I would encourage anybody who's really interested in, who lives in Park Ridge East and is interested in using transit to consider that Blink microtransit option. And that might provide some good service in those areas.
Of people who live in Park Ridge East are affiliated with IU in some way. We used to have a bus that took 10 minutes to get to campus, and now you have to transfer downtown, and it's quicker to walk than it is to take a bus. It's ridiculous with them going around us and not going through us just to pick us up, and it's because of, the ones out here and other places, and then every time they have to make a decision, it's students instead of town. And there's professionals there that can't afford parking on campus that rely on the bus, just as important as students do, yet we don't get that consideration. And that helps if you plan ahead, but if you want every morning to go to the bus and you don't know when you're going to get off work, it's much harder to schedule the reverse thing. It's like asking us to use Uber, which is just instead of riding a bus. It should be that there are regular half an hour. There used to be one in front of my house on Sheffield Drive. People now have been having to walk a mile to get to a bus stop. It's just ridiculous.
So transit is all funded by ridership, and this is an incredible chicken and egg challenge. And so To,
For us to ride, so only if you
I am,
walk that far.
yeah, so just let me finish. So we have done several surveys, and I believe we'll be getting more input on these surveys. The microtransit solution is one to consider, truly, because it counts for our ridership, and the microtransit that we had been using is actually Uber. I mean, you call them when you're ready, and they come. And so, so this all counts towards our ridership, and the more you can help us get use in this, the more we can document that we do have riders that want to come from these areas, and that will help us get buses. It's extraordinarily expensive to run an entire bus that's empty. And so more and more cities are looking at this microtransit as the way to do it. We have a question in the back.
I think to follow up on this is the bus is there now. It's going through.
Yeah.
So we'd like to keep it.
Yeah.
So that, we don't really change anything. And it's working now, I guess, for people. So the idea, we used to have one to go through our neighborhood. And part of this is they could have smaller buses at certain times that would not be as much. But you're almost talking about response demand type of transit service is what you're talking about, right?
The microtransit is a immediate response transit system, yes.
It tends to be more expensive.
It's not. We've run the numbers. We did a pilot project. It is not. And if we can get the numbers up, that can constitute a bus. But I am happy to pass these comments on to John Connell, who's our transit director, and we had some open input sessions on transit, and if necessary, we can have more. What it's important to know, and this is why I'm beating this drum, is the more that you can use transit, the more funding we can get for transit. And part of the reason that it goes to students is because the students ride the transit. And they're really the only reason that we have as robust a transit system as we have is because we can count all those student riders. So.
Students get on and they drive through the neighborhood, they could pick us up.
Understood. Thank you so much. All right. What'd you say? So there are some questions about 446. And what I'm wondering is, because we have several 446 comments here, it sounds like we may want an INDOT person to come have a town hall with us on the east side. 446 is not a city-maintained road. It's under INDOT's jurisdiction, and this comment is getting a four-way stop onto 446 Moores Pike, the bike lanes there not being safe, people speeding in general and on the shoulders. So it sounds like there are some safety needs there that need to be addressed, and we can make a note to follow up with INDOT. Desiree, would you mind making a note so that I can call over there and see what can be done about 446? Okay, and another transportation one is, let's all count how many streets in town are bumpy, crumbling, not smooth. Please help this situation. So I did a almost full day tour of Public Works a few weeks ago, and learned that if we increased our funding for streets, not sidewalks and streets, just for streets, by $2 million a year, then we could maintain them in the condition that they're in, which most people think is not great. Which means in the upcoming budget, what we'd like to see is a more significant increase, and one that actually continues over time. Part of the problem is that really, and I asked how long this has been going on. It's been going on 3 decades that we have not been keeping up with the grade of our streets. And so they've been, the quality of those streets has been declining, and they do need serious help. So we are working on proposing some budgetary allocations that will help with the streets. Our streets crew is working incredibly hard just to bring up a sore subject before you all even send me a card on it. So people know, because this was a learning for me when I became mayor, now that we're not doing the leaf pickup, our street crews can work 6 extra weeks every year. So that is significantly helping our streets. And that was one zero-cost way that we could add some time on our streets. Our sidewalks, likewise, are not in great shape. And so you're going to hear during budget sessions, if you're watching with fascination council meetings already, I bet you are, we're already talking about sidewalks. But the streets also need some improvement. And whether you drive cars or not, a healthy community needs multimodal transportation. Our buses need a place to drive. Many people are not able to take buses or bikes or walk places. And so those streets do need to be improved. And they need to be smooth for people who roll in all kinds of ways. Anybody else want to take any of these? Okay. So this one's about a neighborhood that has an HOA, and an HOA is different than a neighborhood association. An HOA, when they develop, the developers decide to keep the streets private, and the services there then are private, and folks contribute to an HOA fund that's supposed to maintain things. And we are increasingly hearing from HOAs. This one's about Villa Glen. But we're hearing from some other HOAs too that some of the HOAs are not keeping streets and other things up to snuff. So we actually are actively talking to our legal department about how we can support residents who are part of HOAs. If you're part of an HOA that does have private streets, not all HOAs do, but the city then does not service those streets. So we don't pave them, we don't plow them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an interaction directly with the HOA, and we are looking at how we can support residents that live within the HOAs that may not be functioning optimally. Yeah. Empty vacant commercial land, Macy's, College Mall, and Showplace East. Can these be turned into viable properties, single-family housing? Feasibly, if you rezoned them, they could be turned into something else. To my knowledge, at least the College Mall owners don't want to turn it into anything else. However, with some creative minds and a creative push, I do wonder if we could get something more viable in both of those areas. So I love this question. Any vacant property really becomes blighted very quickly, and that's not a Bloomington that we want to live in. Obviously, we have lots of people who are in need of housing. There are also services that people need, and so I am concerned that we have decline in the retail and commercial on the east side. I'm always up for creative conversation about how we can renovate, restore, and get something vibrant into those places. And of course, if it makes money, I'm sure that the property owners would love to talk about it too. So if we could create a win-win-win, that would be amazing. We have another question about pickleball courts. When are we going to get more pickleball courts? This is always research we should do before these town halls. We have put in a number of extra pickleball courts. If you're serious pickleball players, you probably are out at RCA Park, which was formerly Thompson. Of course, the Switchyard pickleball courts are also frequently packed. And I know that there's now a pickleball league, and they're playing at the warehouse. They've installed pickleball courts there, not a city parks initiative. But our parks do surveys, I think, every 3 years, and we can check on when the last one was. We heard a lot about pickleball in the last one, and so we did add some more pickleball courts, I don't know, maybe that's another use for College Mall. Macy's, pickleball, I don't know.
There are some malls places that are rejuvenated by putting pickleball there, because then people will go there again and eat there again and shop there again. So take that grocery stores.
Pickleball for the 21st century community.
Well, I think the pickleball thing is really interesting because my father-in-law, who actually lives in Kentucky, was a really huge tennis player when he was young. And at some point, he stopped playing tennis and started playing pickleball with a whole bunch of others of his peers because, you know, he was a little older and it was a little hard to get all the way across the tennis court, but pickleball was a little bit smaller and it gave him the same sense of satisfaction that tennis did. So I think it's really an interesting sport that has really taken off in a lot of ways. So.
When you go to the courts, though, it's not just old people there.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, I find that just really interesting because it goes across. Well, talk to College Mall. You know, also, while we're on College Mall and also seniors and pickleball, there is the Enright Senior Center bit in College Mall. Yeah, my mother goes there too, so maybe there could be some real cooperative effort there between the Enright Center and College Mall to get some pickleball courts in the Macy's parking lot. Well, then in Macy's, like even when the Halloween shop is there, I think they only use the upper level.
Okay, we have a new stack of questions. You want some of these? These are done. So this one is on the unhoused. Please consider using the old Bloomington Convalescent Center as an interim place for those who need shelter. Keep them out of the elements, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually have checked into this. Thanks for this great idea. It would seem that just opening a building, because we have a building, is better than letting people sleep outside. But as soon as any entity opens a building and lets people sleep there, it has to meet HUD standards, which would entail millions and millions of dollars of renovations in a building. So it's not a feasible solution to open the 714 South Rogers building as a temporary shelter, unfortunately, because especially as a city-owned building, we would come under pretty strict regulations from HUD. So there are ways to do temporary shelters that are not owned by a housing entity with a declaration of an emergency. So COVID, you may remember we had a warehouse open on the B line during COVID. That was an extraordinary situation, and so we were allowed to house people temporarily in that warehouse. All I can say is, I've been going by this term at City Hall lately, minimum viable bureaucracy. That's not a minimum viable bureaucracy kind of solution when we have a roof that works and can't house people there, but unfortunately we can't. So we are in active conversations, and I'll tell you, the biggest challenge right now is that we don't have staffing to support people in shelters. It is the very tangible, real challenge that we're seeing. And if we were to open a building, even if HUD would let us open that building, solving this problem is a lot more than 50 mats on a floor. Confining people to a space and then not providing the supportive services that they need it actually creates a more dangerous situation. And so anything anyone can do to encourage people who, especially people who have lived experience, to explore getting into the field of case management or support. If you are retired and looking for some meaningful work to do, nearly all of our shelter providers are hiring right now. HealthNet is losing a couple of their great outreach workers. So the staffing is the key here. And we can make all the plans in the world for, if we wanted to say a sanctioned camping site even would be a solution, which I don't believe living in a tent is really going to solve people's crisis situations. We need staff. We need to keep people safe. And so we have to solve that problem. And if you have ideas for how to solve that problem, I would love to hear them. I'm not kidding. We've been tossing it around with the housing service providers. Our cabinet's been meeting about it. We need people who are willing to help, and the burnout rate is high. So when we get good people, sometimes they don't stay long. This is, if we want to just start with an old term that none of us loved, this is trickled down from in the 80s closing the state hospitals, which were inadequate. They weren't great. But for people who need long-term care, there's really, there's no solutions. And the street drugs that are out there right now are causing symptomology that is really akin to some severe mental illness. So we need solutions beyond Bloomington, and Bloomington's going to be a leader in trying to figure this out. So I am eager to hear ideas. Yes?
Staffing, but just no people.
We would certainly have been willing to throw ARPA money at trying to staff up. I have our team right now in preparation for the city budget cycle putting together the numbers to see how much the city alone is spending on addressing the unhoused challenges right now. It's going to be a significant number. And I much would rather spend money on a solution than spend money chasing a problem, which is not dignified and it's not healing people. So I would rather put money towards something that's actually going to solve this problem. And I think our public deserves to understand how much money we're spending on this so that we can choose to spend our money on a solution. And we have a firefighter here tonight. I won't call him out by name, but we appreciate you being here. And thank you for your service. But our emergency responders are on the front lines of this as well. So, you know, our parks crews, our emergency responders, our public works crews, our community and family resources, it's touching nearly every department in the city, just as it's touching almost every resident in the community. And so I think we're a community that wants to care for one another and wants to provide solutions that are real solutions, not Band-Aids. Back to pickleball.
I'll go ahead and take this one. So it's talking about planning and transportation, and the question as it reads is, I'm not going to read the question. It basically, it addresses the idea of why do we do traffic remediation in different places, right? Why do we do traffic calming in one place and not another place? Who gets to make those decisions? Why is it that residents can really not want it and still have to have it, but in other places, maybe only one or two residents want it and they get it? And so I'm going to try to explain it kind of from a programmatic standpoint, that when you think about the transportation in the city, when you think about all the different ways of transportation, okay, and there is a transportation plan, and it kind of categorizes the roads in different ways. And so some of the roads in Bloomington are categorized as being greenways. Okay, this is about the greenways, right? Greenways program. And so if you are living along a road that is categorized as a greenway, then that means that Bloomington as a city has said, hey, we want in our network of streets to make this street specifically calmed in such a way as to be a really good, easy bike pathway, right? And that it still has other modes of transportation. It still can be good for buses. It still can be good for cars. It still can be good for pedestrians. But it also is going to be kind of considered like a main drag, you could say, for a cyclist population, okay? And that's a point where you get like, nope, the city declared in the transportation plan in 2019 that the street was going to be declared in such a way. And at that point, it's just kind of bargaining. You're just having a conversation with the planning and transportation staff where you're going, hey, like, here's this thing about our neighborhood that you should know, because what you have planned is maybe not the best thing. Maybe you need to make a slightly different plan and you need to modify your plan some, but that doesn't mean that the whole greenway is going to go away, okay? Because that is a staff-led project. That is a city-led project, all right? But then you have other places where you might just have a neighborhood saying, hey, the cars that drive by my house are going way too fast because there is no traffic calming, there are no stop signs, there are no speed bumps, there's nothing. And the cars are passing my house at 40 miles an hour and I don't feel safe letting my kid play out there. Then they can go through what is called a neighborhood-led traffic calming, and they can get together, the one family with the neighbors, and say, hey, we would like something to change about our street to make it safer, to make it a better place for everybody to use and for all users to feel safe. And that might mean that the cars have to slow down a little bit, and maybe that's okay because the speed limit's only 20 or 25, and the cars need to slow down anyway. And so that is called the neighborhood-led traffic calming initiative. And so, yeah, one family could start that and could try to recruit other families. And of course, the Planning and Transportation Department has an entire procedure of how they alert neighbors. They have specific guidelines about how many feet away from the project that they have to send mailings to, that they have to send alerts to. They have a specific process of a minimum number of community meetings that they have to go through in order to get those approvals. It's kind of lengthy, and but yeah, that's why, I mean, that's staff-led versus neighborhood-led is the real reason, where you're going, well, something that has been approved by the city government officials way back and whenever it was, and those do get refreshed every so many years, we're gonna, that's our goal, that's our main goal, versus a neighborhood-led where they're saying we have this specific problem, and I hope that answers the question.
This ties in, this question, I think a little bit to a question that came up earlier about this condition of the streets. I think city government needs to be more judicious from here out on what the components and features related to these projects, particularly the bike projects, because they can be expensive, quite expensive, and I think that we need to take a harder look at where we're investing and how we get the most bang for the buck, how we're going to benefit the most people that use all kinds of transportation, and that includes cars. I mean, I rode my bike. I'm a bicyclist. I'll often go a week or two without getting in my car, a week or two of my regular day-to-day activities in this town. I biked over here tonight. I rode on a combination of parking lots, roadways, sidewalks, Binford Rogers School, playground, and I didn't pass or encounter a single other cyclist on the way. Now, I well understand the whole goal is to try and get more people to walk and ride. But the fact of the matter is that we can't maintain our streets the way people want them to be maintained, the way they should be maintained, and do projects that have components that are expensive and, in my view, not that productive in terms of increasing safety and usability of a corridor. And Greenway, I hope he mentioned, this was approved, these plans, transportation plan was approved years ago, right? Well, I was on the city council at the time, and we didn't improve like, curb big bump outs, fancy bump outs here all along the, we didn't improve that at all. I mean, there's an existing Greenway corridor over in that Southdown Sheridan area that's been there years, and that's not what it looks like, and it's perfectly functional. It doesn't look like the one that's being implemented now, and with many more structural features that are adding a lot of cost. I think this is something we're going to need to get, and I understand a lot of these, what was on the books and what's happening now, were legacy projects from the last administration. And, there's momentum and there's plans made, and we're carrying some of these things through. I still think modifications could have been made for cost savings that I think also would have made residents and neighbors happy, and not reduced the usability and the safety improvements of the corridor at all. But we can't have it all, and we've got to begin to making some really tough decisions. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to say that.
Yeah, so let me just, let me close out that Greenway conversation by saying we have an awesome new planning director, and David Hiddle is his name, and we are taking at my direction, taking a look at making uniform the way we look at greenways, the way we are looking at how people move through spaces. It shouldn't be a guessing game. When you hear that there's going to be a greenway, when you look at the transportation plan and see there's a greenway, they shouldn't all look different. And as a cyclist myself, they shouldn't behave differently either, because it's confusing to cyclists and it's confusing to motorists as well. Some physical protections are really beneficial. For instance, the Sheridan Road Greenway doesn't have any physical protection, and I have twice now almost gotten hit by a car when I'm in that bike lane because there's no physical protection there. So my priority is multimodal transportation. That means our cars should be able to get places and get places efficiently. Our bikes should also be able to get places efficiently and safely, and our pedestrians should as well. The good news is, I was in Washington a couple weeks ago and met with, I still like to call him Mayor Pete, Secretary Buttigieg and his team, and they are doing some really responsive things in the way that they're funding at the direction of President Biden, really turning that Department of Transportation into a responsive department, so that actually if your grant doesn't get funded, they meet with you on the telephone and tell you what you can do to improve your application so that you can resubmit. And they personally met with me. I talked to them about the various projects that we have ahead of us in Bloomington, and they let me know what funding sources we were most likely to qualify for, and in fact which ones were undersubscribed, so we might have better chance at getting some federal funding. some of these greenways do have specific government grants allocated to them, and so we can't use them just to repave a normal road. We have to use it for physical improvements on a greenway. But we are going to attract as much federal funding as we can to this community to do the good work that we are trying to do. On a related note, do I support or do we collectively support the conversion of College Walnut to be a two-way street? My answer to that is I don't know yet, but I don't support the plans that I saw before. And that is specifically because the plans that I saw before did not meet that standard of multimodal, truly multimodal that I'm looking for as I lead this city. So we haven't gone totally back to the drawing board, but we did put a pause on that project. We are thawing it now to look at how we can make College and Walnut really work for everyone. That is our highest, there's 5 blocks there that are our highest traffic fatality blocks in the city. People are flying through those blocks and they're dying and or having life-changing accidents that change them physically for the rest of their life. So we do need to look at how we are moving people through those spaces. Also, from an economic development lens, there are best practices for making the comfort of walking in these spaces higher, having people engage with the street better, and as our climate warms, I would say we also could use some tree cover on those sidewalks. So we're looking at all of those things, and I haven't seen the plan that I say, yes, that's the one that's worth shaking everything up for, but I think we're going to get one.
Have statistics that says anything about how the trucks stopping to unload contribute to the fatalities and the problems that happen? Because with the two-way, I don't see how anybody could offload.
So we may not go to two-way. That may not be the solution. But we are gonna, what I'm saying is we are gonna look, and we're looking at how we get supplies to the restaurants and how everything flows in those areas. Yeah, the fatalities are not usually around those trucks, though. They're actually when nothing's blocking the road, so anybody who wants to go 55 miles an hour can. And if you're a pedestrian standing at that corner, you know what that feels like.
Yeah, I agree that speed, it's a problem. I mean, you can sit out in the evening at one of the restaurants along there, social canteen or something, and just see the people coming down from the north headed south at a high rate of speed. And I'm totally open though to whatever solutions might mitigate that situation a little bit. And maybe it's two-way. I'm not closed to that idea. I'm open to whatever suggestions and recommendations come forward, and going to study it hard before making decisions.
So I'm actually the council member who's on the College Walnut Corridor Study. I can't remember if it's a committee or a working group, or I don't remember what it's called. But it is on pause, as Mayor Thompson said, to kind of reevaluate. And then we also lost a member of the planning commission or the planning department who was working most actively in that. And that is, as she said, thawing a little bit. And hopefully we should be getting some like proposals of different plans to look at, because there really is not any one plan in my mind either that has already risen to the top. And I've looked at and I've gone, ooh, I really like that one. I can say pretty honestly, I think, that I've looked at them and thought, ooh, I like this part of this one and this part of this one and this part of this one, but I'm not entirely sure how you would take all of those parts and put them together into one image. And yeah, so it's definitely a work in progress. But the other thing that I want to say about this idea of converting streets from one-way to two-way, So I'm from Vermont originally. I don't know if everybody knows that, but I'm from Vermont originally, and I've been in Indiana for almost 20 years. Wow, almost 20 years at this point. And it just feels like it's this super common thing all over Indiana to have these really big major roads that cut through downtowns, and traffic just often barely slows down for them. And at one point, College and Walnut were one-way traffic, were two-way traffic. And they were converted, I think it was the 50s, into this single-way, 3 lanes of traffic. And if we think about historically what was in the 50s, well, everybody was getting cars and everybody was going fast, and that was the way that it was. We really don't want downtown Bloomington to be a drive-through, right? We want it to be a destination. We want people to be taking those roads to stop in downtown, not to drive through downtown. And so it's like scary, this idea of converting something that has been around since before some of us were around, and saying, well, we're gonna change it, we're gonna make it different. But hopefully, however it's done, it improves it. Whether it goes to 2-way, whether it cuts down to 2 lanes, whether it adds separated bike lanes, whether we can add some more trees, whether we change parking. The delivery trucks has been a huge conversation, and there are a couple of different thoughts and ideas for what could happen with deliveries to still make that happen, and there's not been one that has been landed on because it is a really, really hard problem. But one thing I can say is that it's not like it's working great right now anyway. Right? The delivery trucks, it's not working great. I wouldn't want to be one of the people unloading one of those delivery trucks, okay? I dislike being a driver who comes upon them, okay? I don't like being a pedestrian who has the truck parked near the corner and they're blocking my line of vision, okay? Yeah, like it's not working the way that it is now, okay?
And you struck 4 feet so I could get my car.
Speed is an issue. Obviously, the fatality and serious injuries, those are real statistics. This is not working the way that it is right now for our community. And so something needs to change in order for it to work better.
So you can go ahead and actually put an example here in Indiana. Just go up to South Bend, Indiana, and Durham, you talk about Mayor Pete and his city about changing it. So that has been changed for a number of years. You can actually get data from that. The one thing I would say on this is the perception of speed is, I don't know if anyone could come out and actually say exactly how fast a car is going as they go by. Everyone has a perception of how fast it is. Is it 29 or is it 33? Where does it become too fast and where is it too slow? I understand speed is an issue on stopping and everything else that goes along with it. But I think from a background, looking at how this is perceived and the answer of this, going back, we've been in Park Ridge East since 33 years. And we used to have a bus, that's why I'm talking about bus. We used to have a bus coming through. Except some neighbors started complaining that the bus was going too fast. So that was when it was changed, and I actually know the situation quite well. So I hope you guys go ahead and actually be more, not vary from the procedure too much. And part of it is if it's going, what is too fast? Is, you change the speed limit, does that make a difference? Do we put in speed humps to slow down the traffic? Basically, in my background, if you design a road correctly with curbs and or have parked cars on the street alternating, you can slow down traffic. The other part of this is not to allow your children to play in the center of the street because it's not necessarily a cul-de-sac.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So, these are all considerations that we're looking at, and you're right, things like parked cars that naturally narrow a street help people slow down. But the data is the data, and people are dying and having seriously life-altering accidents on those corridors. And so you can look forward to some new plans being produced. We'll have some public input. I will respectfully disagree. The College and Walnut corridor is a main way that people get from north to south. And in our community, you have to go way out of your way to get over to 69 or the bypass, and the bypass doesn't actually take you south to get south. So we need to understand that is, it's not just people going to the square. People are passing through, and those are the roads that have been made to do that. And so unless we produce a different pathway to travel north to south, we also have to acknowledge that we have a lot of people living here that need to get north-south. So I want to get to Lois wanted me to announce this publicly, so let's take a break from questions. The Green Acres community is looking into being a local conservation district, and Lois is here. Lois, maybe you can wave your hand so you can talk to Lois after the town hall. But she's heading up the committee, and they're having 3 public meetings, so everybody's invited. Those are all going to be at the Christian Science Church, which is on East 3rd Street across from Eastland Plaza. They're happening on July 11th at 6 p.m., July 20th at 1 p.m., and July 27th at 1 p.m. And so Lois has some handouts and flyers, and if you'd like to go to that public meeting and learn more about how to support that conservation district, I'm sure she'd appreciate the support. And I'll just say, I believe one of the impetuses behind this conservation district is that there are several mostly modest-sized single-family homes in that community. And by providing a conservation district, it is one way to preserve some naturally occurring, more affordable housing for residents. And so Lois would like to say something, yes. Very loud.
Thank you for announcing that. And also, along with those potential houses, those small houses, we're talking about preserving a community, a community of people. And this is what you need. And so that's why we're very concerned, and we hope a lot of people will come, listen to our presentation. It's tomorrow night, as you said, at 6, and then 2 Saturdays in a row at 1 o'clock on each of those. So, and we would appreciate all kinds of input in helping us gain this, because we want to keep our Green Acres community intact. It's a very important part of our city.
Thanks for your work on that, Lois.
Thank you.
Okay. Are other people sitting with cards that they want to pass forward? Or new topic questions they want us to answer? We're going to wrap up in about 7 minutes so that we can get out of here on time, because people kind of linger after this. Yes, Steve.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for getting Williams Tree Service to work on storm cleanup so quickly. They actually came through my neighborhood last night and removed all the big limbs and everything from all my neighbors' houses. And I had 4 barrels of just small stuff I breaked up and everything, and I put it out there. Well, they didn't pick it up, so I thought, well, anyway, the city will pick it up next week. They came back this morning, first thing, and got my barrels, and the guy brought all 4 barrels up to my garage door after he did it. So I think you might want to put them on full time.
That's outstanding. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I should have written it down, but I want to know if this is fact or fiction. There is local lore around that the county sheriffs from around Monroe County drop their people getting out of jail in Bloomington because we have services and they don't, which is not legal. Is that something that's happening or not?
I don't know if that's happening or not. It was happening, is our understanding, and Chief Dekoff has really been very proactive in communicating with other law enforcement about getting services for people where they are from. An important thing that I want to say about that, which relates to healing and dignity, is that most of the time, the best place to receive services is where your safety net is, where your relationships are. So it's not just that we probably can't be the provision area for everyone. It's also that removing people from their safety nets can be quite damaging. So I want to bounce back to storm recovery for a minute. I just want to say, first of all, as you know, this was my first major storm as mayor. We do see a pattern, right? Every June/early July, we're having a major storm. So our team has started an after-action review. We're meeting about it tomorrow. And we want to know not only how can we respond with excellence when a storm hits like this, but also how can we be ready, and how can we prepare our residents. But the awesome thing is, not only watching our city team, our employees come together during that storm, some of them, the winds were not projected to be what they were. We did not anticipate that kind of damage. Some of them had worked a full day and worked all the way through the night and into the next day. Our animal shelter was without power for 2.5 days. No air conditioning in that blazing heat and taking care of those animals. Just our fire departments had 70 calls just that night. So it's just, it was astounding to me to see these city servants working, and as much so to go out into the neighborhoods and talk to people who had trees down on their houses, who had, fences destroyed, et cetera, and see that neighbors were out there helping neighbors. And that in one of our lowest income neighborhoods, which was hardest hit, we had a pretty low income individual who owns a taco truck open the taco truck for free to feed his entire neighborhood. And these are the kinds of things that we saw throughout the city. And as we're all living without power and we're hot and we're losing all the food in our fridge, and for some of us it was, devastating. People spent their paychecks on food and then it was gone. And to see Community Kitchen and other food providers come forward to meet that need, but also just residents, helping residents, that was perhaps the best example of the Bloomington that I love, that I have seen since I've been mayor. Yes, Lois.
I just wanted to say that's exactly what happened in Green Acres, and that's why we want to preserve it, because everybody was out walking around making sure everybody was okay.
Yeah. It's terrible when these things hit, and it's also, Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers, and they weren't hard to find. All right, I think we've hit most of these questions on the table. Any closing comments? We're at about time. Yes.
Carrie, if you have the opportunity to meet with Pete Buttigieg, which I think is probably really a highlight in many, many ways, because he's so smart about doing things.
So smart.
Could you possibly use those kinds of resources to maybe help with the homeless issue? If we need millions of dollars to make, say, the Bloomington Convalescent Center an appropriate place, could we somehow get something from the federal government to do that? That's just one small thing, but can you leverage your call with the president to help us in a federal way? Thank you.
Yeah, I say this in all seriousness. The Biden administration's been really focused on helping municipalities. He was a local leader, and so he knows the difference it makes to send the money directly to a city or county versus sending it to the state, letting them have their cut, and then letting the cities and seeing if our red state wants to, provide anything to our blue community. And so I say this very honestly. I don't need to leverage anything because I actually found out there was an executive director of interdepartmental agency on homelessness and had a personal conversation with the director who said, I'm going to send my regional person to Bloomington if she hasn't already been there. And so I called Mary Morgan and said, do you know about this? Have you met with this person? And she said, I know about them, but we haven't gotten their attention. And so our federal government is wanting to help, and you don't have to go in a back door to a former Indiana mayor to get it. They're going to send their people, and we're going to get creative about what we can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, thank you all for coming. Appreciate your hour and a quarter here on Wednesday night. Usually we can't do these on Wednesdays because of the council, so we're taking advantage of recess. Thank you for coming during your recess, you two. I'll be hanging out for a few minutes afterwards. Is it okay if we're in the building till 7:30, Adrian? My thanks to St. Thomas Lutheran. If you haven't met the fabulous Pastor Adrian, here she is. Adrian was instrumental in pulling together the multi-faith team that ended up helping stand up the emergency winter shelter this past winter. So kudos to Adrian and her team.